This is White Plains Week, the weekly roundup of White Plains, Westchester, and world news. With John Bailey, editor and publisher of the daily internet newspaper White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, WPCNR.com. Jim Benneroff, editor and publisher of SuburbanStreet.com and WhitePlains.com. And me, Peter Katz, formerly with NBC, ABC News, and stations from Boston to Los Angeles. White Plains Week, what's happening? Who are the newsmakers? What's in store for the future? The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants. White Plains Week is presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76, Verizon Fios Channel 45, and on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. Now, White Plains Week.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. White Plains, Westchester, and the world. John Bailey with you, White Plains Week, the City News Roundup show on the 74th anniversary of the D-Day invasion, which took place June 6th, 1944. It turned the tide in World War II. And right now, here are the headlines.
Hello, I'm Peter Katz, and this is what's happening as we're recording the show June 8th, 2018. Bicycles that you can rent with an app on your smartphone come to White Plains. The White Plains train station renovation is underway, and the new president of Metro North talks about it, and we'll hear what she has to say. The new improved Good Counsel residential project for 52 Broadway is unveiled, and we'll have video on that story. Westchester legislators have utilities on the carpet still, but they're disappointed with the utilities' progress on fixing disconnects in the way they deal with the legislators, among other things. County Executive George Latimer signs the bill raising the minimum age at which you can purchase tobacco products, including e-cigarettes and vaping materials, and that age goes from 18 to 21. What this means for the tobacco retailers, still to be determined. The first public discussion in the new round on the Westchester County Airport Master Plan takes place. No expansion, no increases, more monitoring, higher landing fees demanded. Pleasantville, Chappaqua make noise over aircraft noise. And there will be 2 more hearings coming up. County Executive approves the county's purchase of land for Mount Hope AME Zion Affordable Housing Project. The Trump media manipulation strategies seem to be going on overseas in Hungary to influence the Slovenia election. White Plains schools' opt-out rates from the assessment tests have declined, but slightly only. Juneteenth, that's the observance of the announcement that slavery was banned in 1865, is to be recognized with a parade this weekend, the Juneteenth celebration. John?
Thank you, Peter. And Jim Benneroff is on assignment tonight. And now to the White Plains Week video newsreel. March of Time, June the 8th, 2018, and those show
A
blind
bicycle.
bikes. That's right.
Look
the
at that.
rental bikes. And we'll have more on that shortly.
Okay.
Okay.
We can do that.
But more transit news came from Metro North's new president.
Well, the new president of MTA's Metro North Railroad was in Westchester yesterday, and she declared that safety is first and foremost on her mind, along with passenger comfort and communications between the railroad and its customers. And yes, she had something to say about the work that's going on at the White Plains train station.
On June 7th, the Business Council of Westchester's Political Leadership Series heard from the new MTA Metro North president, Catherine Rinaldi. She became the railroad's president on February 21st after serving as executive vice president since 2015. The event was at 800 Westchester Avenue in Rye Brook. Among the topics, the over $90 million renovation of the White Plains train station.
White Plains Station is the third busiest station in the Metro North network after GCT and Stamford. It's a real reverse commute destination, so you have as many people essentially going in the morning as coming out in the afternoon, going back and forth. And I think because of that, I think that the station itself is really not adequate to meet the needs of the people who take that station every day. So we're going to be doing a real complete refresh of the station. We're going to be replacing the bathrooms, making it more easy to find, more easy to navigate, making it really a transportation destination, which it just is not really up to that task right now. So we're very, very proud about the project. I think it's going to be a terrific project. It's going to, I think, dovetail very nicely with some of the TOD efforts that the mayor is leading now. So I think overall for the business community, for the entire community, I think it's going to be a really terrific project that can make a huge difference.
And what plans do you have for other stations on the Metro North system, both in Westchester and in Connecticut?
So the Enhanced Station Initiative that White Plains is a part of, there are other stations in the Metro North network that are also part of that program. So in Westchester, you have Portchester and Crestwood, and then you have 125th Street, Harlem 125th Street, and Riverdale. So those are the initial 5 stations that are part of that ESI project. We've also got in parallel another project to update customer communications in the station environment, and that also touches 10 stations in Westchester, most of them on the New Haven line. In terms of Connecticut, we work very, very closely with the Connecticut Department of Transportation, and are trying to work collaboratively with them in terms of their plans to upgrade some of the communications at some of their stations as well.
And one thing that she said was that on the White Plains station, when that's completed a couple of years down the road, the completion of work there will coincide with the start of new bus service.
Really? This is the first we have heard of this.
Indeed it is. And as you know, a lot had been said about bus rapid transit over the new Tappan Zee Bridge, etc. Those plans have been a little vague. They supposedly have been working
foggy
on that. White Plains will be a major hub for any kind of bus rapid transit tied in with the new Tappan Zee.
And they say this new link is going to be in by the fall, right?
That's what they say.
That's
but if that's the case, then a fall start of bus rapid transit over the Tappan Zee would not coincide with completion of work at the White Plains train station.
And,
so
one wouldn't think. But the other thing is that they have not done the technical improvements to 287 to help make the bus ride smoother. The staggered entries on the exits.
Another thing Rinaldi said, which is significant, is that she said they're making excellent progress in installing what's called positive train control. It's a safety measure, and what that does is that if the engineer, for example, is suffering from, let's say, sleep apnea and fails to properly control the train, to slow it down on a curve, for example, positive train control takes over automatically and keeps the train operating at a safe speed or brings it to a stop if necessary. The lack of positive train control has been cited in a number of railroad accidents, including the Metro North accident.
Yes, well, that cannot come soon enough. But the bikes are here, ladies and gentlemen. They debuted this week at a press conference that Mayor Roach held down at the train station, and they are Lime bikes and OWO bikes. And what you can do is you, with your smartphone, can come up to a bike, register with the smartphone app or the Google app, and then register, and they'll unlock the bike for you, and then you just ride on away. And when you're through, you just lock it on up. And we're seeing these all over town. There's just some of the places that I saw them just on a random drive.
We see the bikes. What we don't see are bike riders. Now, there were 2 riders that showed up in that little video clip.
Yes, well, I have seen them. I even saw a young woman unlock one that was up on Grand Avenue and just rode right away. It was quite interesting. And now, what do? You pay via credit card through your app, and it's $1 a ride. Their first ride is free, and they also have a cash program if you do not have a credit card.
It will be interesting to see what statistics they are able to come up with, let's say a year from now, as to the usage.
Yes,
make a
one-year
note.
pilot.
Make a note to call City Hall in a year. And see
Yes,
what
I'm sure they'll
what
be
the numbers are.
forthcoming as usual. Right. And
Well, look, bikes are very big in other parts of the world.
Well,
I mean, it's the major transportation method.
Amsterdam,
in some
unbelievable.
places, so.
Now, speaking of another development at the Common Council, this Monday, Bill Null
He's an attorney.
presented a new design for the Good Counsel thing on Broadway, and here is Mr. Null.
This is a site plan that shows the modification. And what we have here is a driveway that enters from the same signalized intersection and then heads south along the same general layout that the existing driveway has. Mapleton would be relocated as before to the north side. And what's being preserved here is the western facade of the convent. The building itself was built obviously as a convent. It has certain limitations in its overall design, very narrow hallways. The rooms in which the nuns lived were really cells, no bathrooms, long hallways, and the building's not in great repair, but it does define that 2.6 plus acre green space that's sort of iconic as you drive down North Broadway. And that appearance is something that would be preserved if we are able to keep the western facade. We've also split the building along the back, and we've reduced the height of the building, as I said, 30 feet. So it would be 6, 8, and 10 stories. The lower edge along Ross is a parking structure on that landfill area, and it's lined essentially with 3-story townhouses that would make it so that the parking structure itself would not appear to be a parking structure. It would be, it would look like townhouses as in fact that's what it would be. We've limited parking there only for guests of the townhouses, and we've significantly reduced the amount of access down at that area. So this circle shows the minimal changes to the views from North Broadway. The 4-story Sunrise Senior Living building that's proposed in the southern side. And then 3-story academic building on the back, most adjacent to Pace. And then the 6, 8, 10-story on the northern site, the multifamily building. And then on the southerly area that's closer to the Ross and Stewart neighborhood, we're looking at a 4, 6, and 8-story.
Yes, so that's the plan.
It's essentially what was proposed all along. There's some tinkering around the edges here. But,
yes, and a different entrance. And
but what's really nice to see is that they are continuing to preserve as vacant space a part of the parcel along North Broadway.
yes, and that hearing continues in July. Speaking of real news,
What?
smoking made news today at the
Well,
county.
actually, in 58 days from today, you will have to be 21 years old to buy tobacco products, even electronic cigarettes and vaping devices here in Westchester, under a new law signed by County Executive George Latimer on Wednesday of this week. The bill sailed through the legislature with only Republican John Testa voting no. At a news conference, Latimer and a number of the legislators said it will help keep youngsters who are 18, 19, and 20 from becoming addicted to nicotine. First, Ben Boykin, chairman of the Board of Legislators, then legislator Mary Jane Shimsky, and then Latimer.
We're talking about those that are 18, 19, 20, and also for those that are younger than that. And during our committee meetings, time and time again, and during our public hearings, where we had 29 people speaking at that meeting, we heard about the growing use of tobacco and high nicotine vaping products being used by our younger people, high school students, and those that are younger. And so by passing this bill and raising the age to 21, we're hoping that we can deter the use and sale of those products to our younger people.
It compromises the functioning of developing impulse control, of developing executive function, and it makes young people more susceptible to addiction of more serious and more dangerous drugs. And given the opioid epidemic we're going through as a society at this point, we should certainly be mindful of the fact that any gateway drugs should be controlled to the extent possible.
The effort to discourage its use is critical. And the reason why is not because of what happens to them when they light up at 14, but what happens when they can't stop lighting up at 55 and 62 and 68, like my mom. When it becomes such an addiction and you can't break it, but the damage you're doing to yourself is so great. So where people might expect that a law may not change human hearts, a law can make it more difficult.
And that's the idea, make it more difficult. Now the question is, how do you enforce it? Presumably the same way you enforce the law which restricts sale to those of age
right,
18 and up.
Asking for IDs.
So.
Personally. Now, it's ironic, though, that when the vape cigarettes first came out, they were indicated as a way of stopping smoking and stopping your
You were
intake.
talking about these vaping things.
Yes, right.
Well, look, nicotine
And
is
now it's come full cycle.
It's an
promoting it.
addictive drug, and the controversy over smoking, has been that tobacco and smoking really is a nicotine delivery system, a drug delivery system, and when you look at it at it that way, then you can start to appreciate the seriousness of this and the seriousness of the addiction. Well, we all know people who have tried and tried and tried to quit smoking.
Yes.
The gag always has been, it's easy to quit smoking. I've done it 100 times.
Yeah, that's true. But we will see how this works out from an enforcement point of view.
It's too bad Beneroff isn't here today. He'd enjoy jumping in on the smoking thing. Jim was he was one of the early crusaders pointing out the medical hazards of smoking, let alone the addictive nature of it.
Right.
Anyway.
Other action at the county level this week. The Board of Legislators had Con Ed and NYSEG in on the carpet. Here's a picture of the hearing as it got underway, but unfortunately they got no real answers. And Benjamin Boykin, shown in the center there, is going to have another meeting. They're particularly concerned that they didn't indicate exactly what they were doing to communicate better fix the communications problems.
Look,
they had.
One thing which no one really seems to address is the fact that Con Edison is guaranteed a return on investment. And so if they have to spend a lot more money on maintaining the system or chopping down trees or putting in new reinforced poles, or changing out transformer systems, whatever it takes to handle the storm response, maybe going back to hiring their own crews rather than relying so much on municipal aid.
That's the figure we have to get.
They're going to pass along those increases to the ratepayers. So all of us will end up paying. No one really has addressed the financial aspect of getting Con Edison and NYSEG,
manpower aspect, the equipment aspect. These are the numbers that has to come out of this series of
I think there's general agreement and even some admission on the part of Con Edison that frankly things didn't go so well in the round of storms.
But there will always be a Con Ed. Unfortunately. Right. Now, the county executive conducted the first of the airport hearings, if we have a slide there, and the airport, of course, shown there, but there were no surprises.
Well, it's part of the airport, yeah.
Yes.
No, actually, there are three of these, and Latimer had told me that the part of what concerned him was the process that was used under the Astorino administration when they came up with their deal to do a long-term lease or privatization, as some call it, of the airport. And he wanted to be sure that they started at the grassroots and really had involvement by all of the stakeholders. I don't like that term necessarily, but by all the people who have an interest
vampire
in the
killers.
airport.
Yeah.
And so they had their first meeting on this. There are 2 more coming up, and then they will review all of the input and perhaps make a decision, or perhaps kick the can down the road. We'll
yes,
have to see.
This is going to be kicked far down the road before a
Yeah.
decision is made. But I mean, there was no surprises. Everybody said they don't want to expand, but we did get a revelation on what the Astroreal plan originally called for. He was going to build 3 new corporate hangars. And I think they've already built 1.
Well, Millionaire has put up one, yeah.
And he was all for a new customs situation,
Yes, and
which
they-
indicated he was looking at more European.
Yes,
European
actually
flights.
that was in the master plan,
Yeah.
a revision or addendum, which
Yes.
the Astroneal administration had contracted for, and they reported on that. So.
Right. Robert McKay Wilson wrote a very good article
David
on that
McKay
meeting.
Wilson.
David? I'm sorry, David. I'm helpless on names.
Yes, you are.
Yes, right. Now,
But there's one name we all know, and that's the Trump name.
yes, the Trump name.
Because while Donald Trump continues to make up lies about the FBI planting spies in his campaign, it's the Trump administration that has been doing the spying. And it's spying, listen to this, John, which assaults the free speech and freedom of the press and rights to privacy, which are the very foundations of our democracy. In a move right out of Hitler's playbook, Trump's people have been caught spying on a New York Times reporter, stealing the reporter's emails, and eavesdropping on the reporter's telephone calls. Under the Obama administration, the Justice Department put in new regulations to help prevent this type of thing from happening. Trump's Justice Department violated the regulations and went ahead with its spying. Most free world leaders agree that North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un has masterfully played Trump to get Trump to elevate Kim, who had been isolated from the world stage, to the same level as other world leaders. Diplomats warn not to expect anything dramatic to come out of the Singapore meeting between the two, if it takes place, other than Trump making concessions to Kim. The White House refuses to disclose why Melania Trump was kept out of public sight for 24 days, but this morning, Trump told reporters that she had undergone a 4-hour, very serious operation. That contradicts what the White House had said before. Have you visited the White House website lately? They've turned it into a propaganda site for Trump, rather than a site which delivers the facts and documents on White House activities and policies. Now it looks like something that Herr Goebbels would have created. whitehouse.gov. Go take a look. The New York-based architect who designed Trump's proposed buildings in Russia, the Ukraine, and other Eastern European countries has disappeared. A reporter at CNBC had uncovered the story of how this architect with an Eastern European background had been working with Trump and Trump's lawyer and business associate Michael Cohen on raising money for these projects, even during the campaign when Trump was denying working on anything with the Russians. When the reporter reached out to the architect for the story, the architect closed his business, wiped out all internet presence, stopped answering the phone, and cannot be found. His name is John Fotiadis. Fotiadis. I think I pronounced it
It's
or
not
butchered
good
it.
to work for Mr. Trump because you go missing.
Trump has alienated most of the U.S. allies with his imposition of tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and the European Union, and the retaliation has begun, which will cost U.S. consumers a fortune. Canada has slapped 25% tariffs on a dozen Canadian products U.S. consumers use. Mexico is starting to impose tariffs, first raising the price of pork and bourbon. Look at the products you buy, and chances are you'll see the legend "Made in Mexico." The anger is likely to be on public display during the G7 meeting of world leaders in Quebec, which Trump left for as we're recording this program. In a testy phone call with Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Trump again showed his ignorance about American history by blaming Canada for burning down the White House in 1812. Actually, it was the British, not the Canadians. Did anyone mention that the U.S. makes money from trade with Canada, $12 billion surplus? Sarah Greenwald, a longtime aide to the corrupt Environmental Protection Administrator Scott Pruitt, has resigned, and another longtime Pruitt aide, Milan Hupp, is due to leave the EPA today. Both of them received huge raises from Pruitt after even the White House told Pruitt not to enrich them. Greenwald was given an extra $66,000 a year, Hupp an extra $48,000. You may have seen the much-played video revealing that Trump, after proclaiming himself a patriot and wrapping himself in the American flag, did not know the words to the patriotic song that every child knows, Irving Berlin's God Bless America. Well, it turns out there's another patriotic song that Trump doesn't know the words to, the national anthem. That was caught by cameras, but for some reason has not been shown, at least I haven't seen it, in the same stories where the God Bless America fiasco was shown. Perhaps it's because it's policy that if you start to play the national anthem, you're supposed to continue it to the end. And the networks don't want to give up the airtime of playing the national anthem. Maybe we'll run that video next week, maybe not. Trump this morning again lied, saying the FBI broke into his lawyer Michael Cohen's office. The FBI actually was executing a legally obtained search warrant signed by a judge to prevent Cohen from destroying evidence. Trump has told reporters that he wants to pardon Muhammad Ali, but he doesn't know that Ali doesn't need a presidential pardon. It seems that Ali's conviction for draft dodging was overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court, so there's nothing to pardon him for, except maybe some of the comments he made to Howard Cosell.
Well, what can I tell you? It speaks for itself. Now, it seems to me that the Trump techniques for manipulating the media and results in elections have been followed by the Hungarian Prime Minister. Take a look at this article that appeared in the New York Times this week. He's the leader of Hungary set up television stations to telecast news that helped the Hungarian candidate for prime minister, who's right-wing, win. And this is right out of what happened in the U.S., I think, didn't it?
I don't know.
It's a model, folks.
They're running Trump TV on the internet.
That's true. Now, the White Plains schools opt-out rates from assessment tests declined slightly, and that's the way they looked. And the major dropping out, or opting out as the case may be, happens in the 7th, 8th, and 9th grades. But that may start going down as the elementary schools do better. And another thing that happened this week was the chopper of the week. I looked out the window and I saw a DPW crew cutting off a limb on a tree in my yard, and I found out that this is part of a repaving operation because they thought the limb would catch fire. However, I would recommend the DPW that if you are planning any tree work on any resident's property, that they phone them in advance and explain it so you don't think something really awful is going to happen. Communication is the key, and I think they should do that. What do you think?
I think we need to uncommunicate at this point by saying good night, folks.
And good night for White Plains Week.
This has been White Plains Week, news and commentary about White Plains, Westchester, and the world. The views and opinions expressed on this program were solely those of the participants. White Plains Week, produced by White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, and presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76 and Verizon Fios Channel 45. You may view White Plains Week anytime on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. For White Plains Week, this is Peter Katz speaking.